Okay, hopefully we're coming out live. Let's just make sure, as per always. We don't want to start rambling on. As if we'd ramble. As if. Okay, we're good. Let's have a quick look.
Rambling on?
Yeah,
Did you say rambling on? Is that what we're doing?
we're rambling. I said me. I didn't cast any aspersions to anyone else. Anyway, let's dive straight in. So we're coming out live. Welcome those people that are going to join us in this conversation with the trainers of Channel 4's Series 2 of the Bad Dog Academy, formerly the Dog Academy. Victoria Stilwell, Sean Brown, and unfortunately Joe Pay is unable to make it. Those and myself were the trainers on this series of the Bad Dog Academy, and we had this is where we need somber music. Our final episode last Thursday of Series 2. Firstly, I just want to say thank you everybody that has reached out to me personally and literally in person when I've seen them and been so positive about the show. We are, our goal was to have people connect with it, and that definitely seemed to be the case. I went to a show this week yesterday, and I had several people come up and asked about the show, and is there going to be a second series? So all of that, we will answer those questions. So first off, how is everybody keeping? Sean, how are you doing, my man? Building your empire of gold?
Yeah, building Rome day by day. No, it's good, yeah.
You busy? You're really busy at the moment.
I'm crazy at the moment. Yeah, I've just got so many. We've just launched a new thing where we're going to start doing stuff with children around dogs and therapy dogs and getting children to know about training dogs and how to act around dogs. And we're doing it with their parents and stuff. And then I've got the equine therapy will start hopefully next month. So I'm doing all the foundations of that. So plenty of time.
And in the
meantime, just to do you don't really do anything, do you, Grifter? Just
I'm still waiting for when I can actually sit on a yacht in south of France or something. They keep telling us it'll come, but I don't know when.
How are you, Vic?
No, Sean, that doesn't happen. Not when you're training dogs. That doesn't happen.
How are you, Vic? How's things stateside? What you've been up to?
I'm shooting a new show it's called Unleashed by Dog TV. And Dog TV, for those who don't know it, is a channel for dogs, and it's very popular here in the United States. And it's been around now for over 10 years, and it's really helped a lot of dogs. It's great. And anyway, I won't go too much into that, but they've got so that's for viewing for dogs, and then they got the human side as well, viewing for guardians, which is Unleashed by Dog TV, which they are launching very soon, and I think in June. And it starts off here in June in the United States is Anxiety Awareness Month, which is for dogs, Canine Anxiety Awareness Month. So we're kicking off our show called The Experts, which is just a group of experts, veterinarians, vet behaviorists, trainers, sitting down and answering viewers' questions live. We don't know the questions beforehand. So so it's really fun. It's good. And it was just nice. It was nice to have a makeup artist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're a little bit more budget on the Bad Dog Academy. It was do your own.
Do your own. And so that's what I was like, oh man, you've done your eyeliner too. That's too much.
Yeah.
So it's like, seriously, should you not know Stilwell after 20 years in this business of how to do your makeup? No, because actually I don't really care that much.
Yeah. It was obviously it was a somber episode last week because it was the final episode. There's been 8 episodes of the Bad Dog Academy. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, there is still time. You can go on streaming services and Channel 4 and check it out, certainly in the UK. And again, really, really great episode of what went into it, the cases that was covered, and the work that was done. So we had, obviously, first off, Yasmin and James with their bulldog Ronnie, which myself and Sean dealt with. We then had Pixie the Pomeranian, which Vic dealt with, and then we had Naomi and Joe with their Puggle-ish thing, Pugglish, a mixture, a concoction of breeds, Tank, who Joe dealt with. Obviously, Joe's unable to make to this evening in this talk. So, Vic, let's start with your case, Pixie the Pomeranian. So, obviously, the owners came with the issue or the challenge that Pixie was barking at her dog bowl. And when you did what you do best and you unpacked it, we actually found out that there was a little bit more to it than initially meets the eye, which is often the case when you have behavioral problems. And you managed to work out that actually it was about the other dog that they lost and the impact that that made in the house dynamic, pack dynamics, effect on the individual dog, etc., etc. So how did you think that went for you? How did it come across? And obviously tell people about that.
I think it was really good. I put on my social media, just before the episode aired, like, the little thing that we get so that we can just post it. And it was about Pixie. And I was like, I put on my thing, why do you think, just asking people, why do you think that she's barking at food? And people were like, oh, it's because Chihuahuas and smaller dogs like to eat from saucers. Job done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, nope. And then there were all these great suggestions, but actually none of that. And of course, until you see the story, then you might be able to like deduce from the story. But actually, she needed support while eating, and she was so used to eating next to her best friend that and she ate very fast. So there was that competitive aspect. It was that habit that built up, so that when her friend died and there was nobody there, she relied on Joe to be there, her mum, so that she could eat. So she almost could continue that ritual that she'd built up. And I think barking at her food bowl, whether you change the food bowl, you make it a flat bowl, you put it in a different room, you put rubber surfaces underneath it, you do all that stuff, didn't matter. She still barked at that food. And it's just because that's what she was so used to doing. And I think she was telling Joe that there was something off, there was something wrong, and she was confused. But as soon as we started to produce the food in a different way, that I was like, this is Mimi's way now. This is like she's moving on from her friend, and we're going to present the food in a different way with a snuffle mat, or just throwing food on the ground, or just so she can go and seek and discover. That's her new ritual now. Yeah. And now she's eating from a bowl as well. So it's like she was stuck, and she was saying she was stuck. And I think that's what a lot of us do on the Dog Academy, is that we help these dogs become unstuck.
Yeah, definitely. I would say definitely you can see people I think underestimate that when you have a change in dynamic in your household. We talked about multi-dog households, how you can have issues when hormones are right. You can have other issues, and one of the issues that you can have is where there's a change in the dynamics of your household. Dogs are, by nature, they're social creatures. They live in packs and groups. That is what they are hardwired to seek out, and they want to be with their peers. So, and what you can definitely find is that individual dogs can form very, very close relationships. It doesn't necessarily be that doesn't have to be that they're siblings, but they can really, really bond. And when that bond is broken for whatever reason, and the most common cause is when one is passed away through old age or other circumstances, you can see the dog that remains, especially if it becomes an individual or solitary dog, that dog can really, really be affected. And what you tend to find in a lot of homes is that dogs or owners, when they get multiple dogs, they'll allow them to really, really closely bond. Where the way in which I raise my dogs is slightly different. I become the primary person they focus on. So there's a slightly different dynamic in my home, but you can definitely see where one dog goes, you see a shifting in the social hierarchy, etc. And that's really, really normal. How dogs manifest it can be what can often throw owners. And in some cases, you can definitely see anxiety creep in. The dogs can go off their food. They can become very insular, and very similar to what would be described, what would be seen, or traits that you've seen humans as depression and grief. Whether, who knows whether dogs literally have grief. Again, that would be a really interesting thing to explore. But you can definitely see shifts in the dynamics. So Sean, you obviously have a household of dogs.
Can I just add, Kamal, just to there, because I do feel like it was grief. I do feel like there was, because she played with her toys less. She didn't play with her toys, and she took herself off to their bedroom and put herself underneath the bed, which she'd never done before.
Wow.
And so she definitely was withdrawing, and so and that's how it all started. So you're absolutely right. I do believe dogs will feel grief, and why not? I mean, like, they feel everything else, so why not? But that it's what was happening. She really became depressed.
And where you see it commonly really is when you have a dog that's more of an introvert, and the second dog gives them a lot of confidence. If that anchor, and you would use an anchor dog in a lot of cases to build a lot of confidence, if that anchor dog now goes, that dog is going to show a lot of those traits which it got confidence from the second dog. And that, I think, was definitely probably one of the underlying themes with this particular case. So Sean, obviously you work with a lot of dogs. You have multi-dog household. Have you ever observed anything where you see a change in the dynamics, whether it's grief or your dog's changing or behaving differently?
I mean, I had it even with, like, you all work with Caesar. Caesar was a really, really confident dog. But when I lost Cleo before Caesar, he went off his food. He lost all his drive, and I think his was more around sort of like competitive eating type of thing. That's where he was getting his drive from. And so there's a range of different reasons. And then when we introduced a new dog again, he went straight back onto his food, and he was like, so it was the same. We did similar stuff where he needed more like interactive feeding and games and stuff like that. And I think that the key from that episode is for trainers, not just to sort of cement onto just the problem that you're looking at. Always get the story, always delve into the story, because it's like you say, we can have a dog go off food and see if it is over grief, but there can be loads of different outcomes even from that. So get the backstory, get what the dog's personality was like, to then work it out. And I mean, like Kamal, you're saying your dogs, you like them focused on you. You do a lot of sort of obedience and work with them. I'm kind of nearly the opposite, whereas I like my dogs are very independent. They come out and work with us. They kind of mill around. They're very, very well balanced with. I want them to be able to make decisions themselves, and we still get them effects. So it's no matter which way you're bringing your dog up or how they are, grief affects us all. It affects humans in the same sort of way. So I think it's a great case for people who have watched, because it's such an interesting angle that maybe doesn't normally make it on TV, or a lot of trainers, when they're together and they're talking about it, maybe don't talk about them sort of cases and them sort of sides, because they're quite rare, and you can get a little bit trapped with them as well, and you can get a bit stuck and not understand how to solve the problem, really.
Well, we delved into, I'm asked so many questions. They live in an apartment, right? Or a flat, and they're on the top floor of the flat. So is it because there's noise downstairs? Mm-hmm. What time of day is it? Obviously, we've gone through all the medical stuff, and she's fine and fit and dandy. That's fine. But, so I'm asking about noise and vibration and sound from downstairs. And is there a particular, but it did come down to that. That ritual of competitive eating, like you said, she didn't have that anymore, and she needed it. So she created her own in a way by barking at the bowl. Do you see what I mean?
The thing is with that as well, you'll find, you get like the competitive eating, they can maybe feel more reassured, especially if they're a group dog, and if they've created this sort of like pack and family, they'll only eat when everybody else is eating, because we as humans, we create that standard routine and almost like dinner time at the table. So there can be so many factors, can't there? And it's just, you've had a few edgy ones throughout the series, to be fair, where you've had to kind of like detective on.
I love it, edgy. I love edgy. That's my, you can have all the other stuff, but I love edgy.
Whereas my last week one was like a Great Dane that wasn't off the lead for 10 months, and they were saying it was pulling on the lead. It's kind of like,
yeah, but you're great with that, because I mean, you're also very diplomatic. Both you and Kamal are very diplomatic when it comes to speaking with people about, I mean, you could say that sucks, that's terrible. You got a Great Dane and that poor dog hasn't been off that lead. Oh my goodness. But you don't. You explain it so beautifully, explain it succinctly, and of course it changes.
Do you know what that pains me is that sometimes it can be so obvious for you, but you kind of forget that I'm like with dogs every single day. Everything I build for all my centers is designed in a dog's image. And then you forget, don't you, that like other people are doing, like the dogs might be 10, 15% of their day. Yeah. And it's only their dog that they've like, there isn't something that research. And so it's like, I think the best angle has always been sort of softly with people, because it's their life doesn't revolve around dogs necessarily.
Yeah, I think that, do you know what, Sean? I think that's a really, really important point to remember. And I'd say that this series definitely showed a broad range of behavioral challenges and challenges that didn't necessarily appear as they were initially presented to us. And I think that really did illustrate the beauty of what we do. You know, it isn't about the superficial. Oh, the dog barks, how do we stop him barking? Well, actually, barking is the symptom. We need to delve back into the cause of the problem if you really want to see long-lasting, impactful change. And I would say that often when it comes to dog training and behavior modification, people focus on the superficial. And actually, if you deal with the core issue, you're going to have not only solutions for that problem, but you're going to see an improvement across the board. And I'd say that that's one of the things that even as a viewer I saw consistently in this series. The other thing that I'd say, and obviously we've talked about grief when it comes to the dog and how it's impacted. The other thing that needs to be that should be talked about more openly is, and we've all experienced it at some point, is the loss of a dog, and they are a family member, and how impactful that can be for you. And I think if you certainly people that are owning a dog for the first time, I think it can really, really hit, not that it doesn't for us, you know, no matter how many dogs you have, it still is impactful. That first experience can catch people off guard, thinking it was, inverted commas, just the dog, and I can't believe how this has impacted me. And I would say that I've had several first-time dog owners that I've obviously taught and befriended throughout the whole of their dog's life. And when they have said to me, they didn't realize they would be this affected by, inverted commas, just a dog. And I didn't mean it that way, because what they absolutely embraced and they understood was how, you know, these little furry four-legged creatures get in your skin and in your heart. And I think that that's a huge thing, that obviously they're not necessarily with that couple, but allowing yourself, you know, the compassion to understand how that can affect you as a dog owner. I think that's a really, really important point to just talk about. So we went from that case, which was a little bit emotive, to one that was a little bit more lighthearted, which was Yasmin and James and their dog Ronnie. And he was a chronic humper. But again, we worked on the core root problem and not the superficial. And we actually realized that the end conclusion was that Ronnie was essentially a little bit bored and he needed more done in his day. And with best intentions, Ronnie was a dog that probably represented a lot of the dogs in this country and a lot of the dogs across the world. But as Sean said, we're all, you know, dog lovers, dog enthusiasts. Our lives revolve around dogs and their welfare, and, you know, looking at the world from their perspective. And what we do is try to improve that world so that more people can see the world from the dog's perspective. And with best intentions, a lot of people just don't have that perspective, and hopefully they will post the Dog Academy, the Bad Dog Academy. But I would say that a lot of behavioral problems are just a misunderstanding of what a dog truly needs. And that is, you know, education, enrichment, emotional stability, exercise, entertainment. Those 5 core E's can be the pillar of having a healthy, happy dog. And you know, sitting down is the sexy stuff that can come. But if you meet your dog's needs as a core basis, you're going to see a happy, contented dog. And obviously with Ronnie, his owners it was starting to now have a ripple effect in their relationship. They were starting to lose the joy of dog ownership. So, Sean, any thoughts about that one? How did they were a great couple to work with, wouldn't they? They were really fun.
And to be fair, he was actually a great dog to work with as well. The thing is, so the humping and the stimulation that he needed. So if you take away the humping, that could have been replaced with barking out of a window, jumping up, chewing stuff in the house. So that was kind of just his way of expressing, and actually it was quite effective because he got attention from it, and he kind of liked the rough and tumble. So when they were trying to push him off and stuff, he kind of liked that. So that was like one side of the stimulation. And the other side was he had been through a few different houses, and he had never been taught like basic impulse control. He had no cues to, like, say, get down or in your bed or leave it or anything like that. So essentially what you then had was a dog that was understimulated, crying out for attention, and you couldn't actually communicate to the dog of what you wanted to happen. So it was this perfect cocktail for just pure mess. And it's kind of funny. Like I said, some people will be like, oh, it's a bit funny when he's doing it. But then when he's doing it to the kid and then he's scratching the kid, and actually that arousal could start getting out of control and you're trying to push the dog off and it's starting to get a little bit messy. That's where Ronnie could have then went to. So then coming to us was obviously it was life changing, because then when he's went away, he never did it again for them. But like I say, the key things from it were this attention side of diagnosing what the problem was, a clear problem, and then making a plan. But also give yourself tools to be able to communicate to your dog, and that the dog understands it as well, because that ultimately gives him a chance to succeed. Didn't have a chance. I mean, the Chris Packard scene, you could not put anything on the floor, and he physically could not leave it alone, and his head was just exploding. So then when they're saying, oh, he's ripping up the shopping, or he's jumping up, of course that's like level 10, 15. You haven't gave him the chance. And it's just like with kids, people that have got kids, you teach your kid to share when they're really young, and you bring them up and you say, share this. Because when it's an 18-stone bloke that's 22 and he's not sharing, then you have a problem. Yes. And that's kind of where Ronnie had got to. So we just had to get a bit of sort of communication in there.
Vic, I loved it. I have to say, I loved your explanation, because I think a lot of people see that and they say, oh, the dog's being naughty. And we were right. Or that a lot of people see that, sexual behavior, humping bulldog, ha, 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 ha. But when you explained it so beautifully, this is frustration, I think a lot of people who really don't know about dog behavior would have gone, what? Really? This isn't a dog that's feeling sexy. This is not like, this is really? Dogs can hump like, I think that's the beauty of the show, because we know it. Yeah. And I think we think that more people should know it, but they don't.
Yeah.
How many people do you think were sitting watching that thinking, oh, I wonder why our dog does it with a teddy bear, or humps this or this and the other one? And they might have tried loads of different things, and then actually that's all it is.
Or the people that see that and whack a shock collar on it, or a prong collar, and correct.
Or the other, they see that behavior and they jump to castration or neutering it. And yet the dog still does the same behavior. And you kind of go, it's the misunderstanding that it wasn't a sexual behavior in the first place. It was frustration.
In Ronnie's case, Ronnie wasn't super. He was quite playful when you got to know him, but I wouldn't have said he was like a super, super confident dog. And if you had got him snipped, you might have then introduced secondary problems. And then honestly, from the Dog Academy is just get the right behaviourist that knows what they're talking about, and get it diagnosed. Make sure you definitely know what the dog is doing it, because there is it can be such a landmine.
Definitely. My biggest takeaway from that case is the realization and repetition of the point that dogs need some level of enrichment and engagement on a daily basis. If it isn't a walk in the woods, it needs to be a snuffle mat or a Kong. If you can't do that, then do some training or a trick training or some engagement. They need something from you. That is just an extension of your relationship. It would be no different with your children, if you were, and it's something that we could all be slip into, where you're busy working, you forget, actually, I need to spend quality time with my children. I need to take them out and just bond with them. I need to, sit in with them and read a book if they're young, or etc. Or take time in their teens to spend time or have quality time where you can just relate and reconnect with them. And that's the same that we need to remind ourselves of dogs. We need to continually work and invest our relationship if we want to have the kind of relationship that you see on television. We see with Lassie, we see Rin Tin Tin. Those dogs are trained dogs, and they have a relationship with their trainer, and that then it obviously can be passed on to other people's on a set. But if you want to have that with your dog, you have to be committed to the process. Dog ownership is all about you investing and committing to the end goal, making sure that you are present with who your dog is and meeting their needs as an individual. Your Border Collie is going to have different needs to your Bulldog. Your Bulldog's going to have different needs to your Afghan. Your Afghan's going to have different needs to your Pug. And it's really important that you understand who and what your dog is and meet them where they are at as an individual. This would be my input to that. So the next case that we had was Naomi and Joe with Tank. And that was a dog that was showing, huge levels of arousal, which was obviously concerning the owners because they were expectant parents, I should say, and they were concerned about his behavior. And they saw a correlation between when Naomi was obviously first pregnant and obviously the dog's behavior. So as all of us are parents, let's delve into the challenge of dogs and children and how to integrate them successfully. I would say, obviously dog bites occur on a regular basis. Often when it's with children, as a dog trainer, as the behaviorist, you can normally unpack and see little telltale signs that could have contributed to that instant happening. So, Vicky, you've been, your daughter's now well through the years of mine and Sean's. So, any thoughts on children, dogs, and that situation specifically?
Yeah, I know Sean is a new parent, well, like a year-old parent. And so you probably you're living it right now, and Kamal's and our daughters are older now. But I do remember we had a cat when my daughter was born. She was our 9/11 cat. We lived in Midtown Manhattan. We were there during 9/11, and I was volunteering with the ASPCA at the time. And so we had a lot of animals come into the shelter, and a lot of animals from people who hadn't made it or had been killed. So Angelica was one of those. And we were fostering at the time. So we fostered her and she never left. She was a foster fail, we call them, which is great. It's a good thing. So I had Angelica. Angelica was a Maine Coon. She was like my dog cat. She was like a dog. She was huge and beautiful. And so when Alex came along, I had to obviously manage all interactions because and it wasn't so much when Alex was a baby or was an infant, that was okay. Angelica was just curious and would lie next to her. But when she started to go out and grab, that's when I had to really be careful. And then there was one time, however much you manage the situation or whatever, or you actively supervise, there was one time when Alex, who was walking at the time, she was a toddler, she went up, she was like, kitty, which was her first word, by the way, was kitty. She went up and she went to go like this, and Angelica went whoop, swiped her hand, not with nails, but Angelica was like, nope. And Alex was like, and started to cry. And after that, she never went up to Angelica. Angelica taught her, but I was like, it was like slow motion. I was like,
yeah.
Just active supervision, as careful as you can, because once she got older, then of course Angelica and her had a great relationship. But it's the grabby time, which Sean, I think you're in right now, aren't you?
Yeah, where you're, and he likes chucking things at the moment and hurling stuff, and which is fun when it's like a little ball, but when it's like your coaster, your glass coaster and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I agree. We did prep before the kid came, so I would say without going into details of actual training different stuff, you want to make it when the baby arrives that the dogs are kind of bored of. It's like a boring thing. They're not really interested. It's how I did it. That it was kind of just another thing by that point that was in the room, and they were really desensitized to it. We did a lot of and Bowen's quite good at it now, where when the dogs are on the bed, he won't go near their bed, and that's been a lot of supervision from us to stop him every time. But now you can kind of talk to him because he's like 16 months now, and you kind of know that when he goes in, you go no Bowen, he'll leave them. So the dogs then have like a get out. So their last resort would be any sort of mouthing, and I naturally am quite playful with mine anyways, and I chuck them around and play on that way. so that they're actually really quite good, like with being handled and pulled at, and with the mouthing of hands that they know not to. But I did more because Lando's a puppy. I've done loads of that with him, just so in case he did grab an ear or a cheek or anything like that, he's more likely to stimulate play rather than like an aggression. But that's not always. I mean, we've done a lot of clients, and it's not always right for them dogs. You got dogs where you'll never get that sort of play, and I think the boundaries and the management is the biggest thing that I've got. Because I mean, obviously, if I talk about Caesar again, Caesar, before I lost Caesar, out of me, the 3 that I had, he was definitely the worst with the kid. And he wasn't bad, but he'd just leave the room because I'd just leave the door open for my bedroom.
Which is
and
great.
As soon as you started crying or chucking things around, he just stood up and walked off and went to lay on my bed. And that was the option we gave him, is that he would just go off. I'm going to go off. So, yeah, management's probably your biggest thing with kids.
I would. It's really interesting you say about Caesar, because Caesar's temperament was phenomenal, obviously, but he was an older dog. And you go, that's the bit that you have to be compassionate about, and that you have to be aware again of where your dog is as an individual at the time when you bring a child in. So my experience was very intentional about when Neve was obviously due to arrive and then eventually arrive, was that I had a very clear relationship that I wanted them to have, and that I didn't ever force my dogs on Neve. My dogs were a part of my life, and obviously if she gravitated to them eventually, that has to be her choice. So as a result, she was always around my dogs, and my dogs obviously had a level of training. So that would be the first thing. Make sure that you educate your dogs some simple basic skills: go to bed, go to crate, being able to move them away from you when you want to, have them remain in somewhere, a location, so they have that level of control. I absolutely echo the points of that Vic and Sean said about management. Have that, absolutely. But the other thing is also preparing your dog, so that you're going to have a change in routine when you have a child. So if you are diligent, if you get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and walk your dog or feed them, and change that up in preparation to having a child. Make sure that your dogs get used to a randomness to your routine, because that's absolutely going to happen when you have a new child. Your routine's going to go out the window, and your dogs need to learn to adjust to that. The other thing is, make sure when the child arrives that you have lots of enrichment tools in place, like we use with Ronnie, so that if there's days when, to be honest, you're just exhausted and you don't have the energy, you can just give them, a Kong or snuffle mat and they can get by. So also get them used to having slightly changes in their exercising routine. It might be that you have to, have the odd day where they don't get as much exercise, and that's something that they will learn to adjust to if you put the preparation work in. If your dog has been conditioned that they have 2 hours every single day at 5 o'clock, if that doesn't happen because your baby takes priority or your new child takes priority, that can be really, really stressful and add a challenge that you really don't want when you are a new parent. So prepare your dog for that. Prepare your dog also for the change in your environment. So when Neve was here, obviously we had areas where she needed to have a changing mat. So my dogs were all trained prior to her arriving. The changing mat would be on the floor, and they would be reinforced for being away from it. And we would, I would have pretend like I was changing, or we did some dummy runs with the pram with the dogs on leads. So
important.
That's another thing to prepare. So I take the pram out on a dog walk, or I would also carry something on a dog walk so that I could, they understood that picture meant you still have to listen to me. There's reinforcement available, or whatever the case may be. So putting those proprietary steps in place, it just makes the process of bringing your child into your home far less stressful. The other thing I would also suggest to people is have, I always talk about dog ownership, having villages. Have villages for both the child and the dog. So, for example, if you need somebody, if you have to do things with your children and your dog needs to have somebody to come in to let them out, or to have them overnight, or vice versa, make sure that you have people that can support you in that process, whether it be family members, friends, or a professional. It may be that you go, do you know what? I'm going to get a dog walker, because I know that I'm going to be really, for when your baby first turns up, for the first 3 weeks or for a month, get a dog walker to take the dog out, and get a good one. So make sure that you bed them in before the child arrives, so that if anything untoward happens, then that's not additional stress. It's always, to me, it's about being intentional and planning for that child to arrive. And I think that's where you can alleviate a lot of this tension and stress. For me, I'm quite laid back about that sort of stuff. So when Neve arrived, I used to just take her everywhere with me. If I went to work, she came to work. I was very fortunate in that my good friend, who she now, she is like her grandma, she used to help out when I worked. So she'd look after her. I would go and work. I'd then come back and see to her. And then in the evening, we'd go back. She'd fall asleep in my van on the way home. I'd pop her to bed and we'd do that cycle. So it's all doable as long as you just think about what your lifestyle is and preparing your dog for changes in that routine and that lifestyle. Again, it comes back to the reoccurring theme that we've seen throughout the Bad Dog Academy. The more intentional you are about the dog that you want, the better chance you are going to be with that dog, either becoming the dog that you have, becoming that dog, or creating that dog. It's about being intentional and being really clear about who you want your dog to be. Do you want your dog to be social? Do you want your dog to be great with children? Well, if so, then think about how you're going to create that. Also, the caveat to that is, accept that sometimes some dogs just don't need to be in that situation. So if I have a dog that I thought, you know what, I'm just not comfortable, and I would always take provisions, especially with children and dogs, because they're both unpredictable entities. If you have a dog that you go, do you know what, whether it's, for example, Caesar, who was older, just don't put the dog in that situation. To me, that is good parenting, responsible dog ownership, and good management to take appropriate safety precautions so that you don't have something happen where something really unfortunate happens that could be impactful for everybody. So again, just kind of reiterating the point, be intentional, be purposeful. And you should, Neve is phenomenal with my dogs, absolutely phenomenal, in that she's not really a dog. I wouldn't say she's going to have a dog probably long term, but she's got such a great awareness of them. And I can remember vividly on a couch just behind where I'm sat now, of one of the dogs being on the sofa in between me and her mum, and her wanting to get to me, and her stopping and seeing the dog and going, like, it's basically communicating, I don't want to step over the dog because the dog's asleep. And she couldn't even talk, but I knew exactly what she was communicating, because she understood that the dog had boundaries, and she knew the dog was asleep. Don't go up to the dog when there's asleep. So she just waited. I picked her up, lifted her over, happy days. And again, it's about, she's brilliant with dogs, and she's got great body language, but that's been, nurtured and cultivated. I think that, dogs and kids is always a tricky combination. And I think parents will naturally have a level of apprehension when they have got a dog and a child arriving. And so many times when they don't think about and plan it out, the dog ends up the victim, really, and they end up either rehoming them, etc. How about Vicky? Go on.
Well, I want to add to that, when your kid gets a little bit older and they start having play dates, that I had a lab at the time, so I got our Labrador, who was 5 years old when we got her. Alex was 3. And I mean, Sadie was the most amazing dog. She was a heart dog, amazing dog, not great with other dogs, but just anyway, she and Angelica at the time, and then Angelica passed away, and then we got Jasmine, the Chihuahua. So it was, but I would say when I had anybody come around for play dates, Jasmine was didn't really want to. I mean, she was fine. She just didn't really want to say hello to lots of kids coming and running around. But of course, they all wanted to touch her, and I was just like, no. So I had a safe zone for my dogs when the kids came around for play dates and were running around. And even though I could tell you that Sadie, you could do anything to her, that dog, pull her tail if you stepped on her by accident, whatever, and that she would just go, all right. But still, I'm not going to put her to be subjected to that. Definitely. And I was at a friend's house the other day. It was a party for their kid, and they had a lot of family members that had flown in, and they have a gorgeous golden retriever. This dog is just beautiful. But this was like 3 hours into the lunch party, and this 10-year-old was going on all fours, pretending to be a dog, and was chasing the golden retriever and continued to do it. And I was like, to my friend, I was like, you better stop that, because the parents didn't. They were laughing and thought it was funny. And I knew that this dog was exhausted.
Yeah.
And even my friend said to me, he's fine. He's fine. I was like, no, He's not fine. Advocate for him. So I think play dates. It's a big deal. Put your dogs away so your kids can be safe. Your dogs are safe. They've got their own thing. They've got their own safe zone behind a baby gate, whatever. It's a no kids zone. Also, be careful when your kid is going for play dates with other kids to other people's houses. Ask about the animals in those houses. Because there's one situation where I didn't, and I was greeted at the door. My daughter, the friend of the nanny, had picked up my daughter and this friend, and they went to their house. And I knocked on the door, and I was greeted by rah, 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 and this dog would have gone for me, fine with the kids, but so I was like, I should know better. So I'll always ask. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Dog like with kids. What's your policy when you have kids around?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's, and the biggest takeaway from what you just said is don't be afraid to advocate for the dog, really,
Right.
and I think that's such a critical element, and that not all dogs, sometimes, as I said, we want our dogs to be great to go in the pub and be great with children and great with this and great with that. And you kind of go, you're not looking for a dog, you're looking for Jesus Christ. It's like, we need to be more realistic with high expectations.
I wish we were as good as that.
Absolutely. So just going to read some of the comments that have been written and see if there's any questions. So Matt said, my dog has never eaten from a dog bowl. She's always had a snuffle mat, Kongs, and scatter feeding. Great, good, really, really great to hear. Again, for me, I think enrichment feeding and scatter feeding is great. I mean, obviously, we did a giveaway of the Play 9 Rulo, which was the enrichment toy. Fantastic. Products like that are great, to use to just make it more interesting. And it just means that your dog is having a much more natural way of being fed. Think of dogs in the wild and how they would live their lives. So yeah, to look at this one. So the next one, is Lorraine said, hope they're going to be more of a Bad Dog Academy, and also keep Nick with you too, as this program is learning from the dog owner, even emotion side of the dog, like Pixie. And I love the live talk about the program. Thank you, Lorraine. So at the moment, we don't know, to be truthful. Television is it's that decision making process is out of our hands. We would all, I would say, love to do another series because we really do believe in the show. I feel that this series was even better than the first because we all know better. We knew more about what we were aiming for. And I think the cases covered were far more challenging and interesting for the viewers. So fingers crossed that we get another series. But at the moment, we don't know. So fingers crossed, just send us good thoughts and all that bit. So Matt said, humping is described as dominance too much. Must admit, I find that annoying. Yes, it is. It's such a common misconception that dogs are trying to bring down the demise of the human race with all their wily ways to dominate us. They're sitting up, they're getting together in their little covens, and they're trying to do us over.
They are absolutely. They're trying to achieve world domination. You should know that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look. When Sean cradles his face and told him they'd help him, this is Bonnie, I welled up. Sean has that effect on most people, let me tell you. I often welled up working with him. I was cradling you all the time, wasn't I? Yeah, the first time I met him, I welled up. Jesus Christ. Wow.
It's true, that was a moment. And I have to say, the other moment was right at the end of the show when you had Tank with the baby who had been born by
they sent us the picture of the dog laying on. That's right. Yeah.
And nobody even in the show, it is it was that picture. Yeah. Oh no, there was video of the dog. And the baby actually does just slightly reach out the hand, and Tank just looks up and goes, and then they all settle back down and go to sleep. I was like, I cried. But I do think, Sean, when you are saying to the dog, I'm going to help you. I got you, buddy. I'm going to help you. So much better than some other trainers out there.
Yeah, it was
shall not be named.
TV Gold.
The thing is, though, I'd honestly say that I wouldn't say I'm like a really technical trainer. I just try and like kind of be with the dog and like understand, which is maybe it's for TV, they like it and stuff. But in general, I mean, like with all animals, I'm doing stuff with horses now. I've had rabbits, guinea pigs. My mum and dad have always rescued animals. It's kind of just trying to like like trying to just connect with the animal really and sort of get an energy or aura, whatever you want, and just try and work together. And I think a lot of these dogs, they're just misunderstood. And I feel like they pick up on the owners as well because they're frustrated or worried or whatever it is. Then if you can just come in and just be like quite calm and reassurance and kind of make a connection with them, I feel like it helps you. Might not, I don't know, but what I feel.
I would absolutely back you 1,000% on that. And that I would say, as individuals, we all actually work very similarly, but very differently as well in our approaches and our technique. But we all have a common goal, which is to really understand the dog and to help the owners. I think that the thing that makes the show so powerful is that our agenda is not just to help the dogs, but it is to help the owners. You know, we really do operate from that place. Sometimes it's a bit carrot, sometimes it's a bit stick. And I think that's what really does. We're on the team. We're on the team of the owners. We're on the side of the dog as well. And I think that however we choose to get there, I think that's what really, and we're all going to have a slightly different approach, which will resonate with different people. And the goal is to try and obviously, you know, have them succeed really, which is what I think that was everybody consistently did really well.
Like people won't see it. So there was a dog called Prudence that we did as well, the box. I think you did a clip of it on the last one. And they had a child that was that needed a lot of care, pretty much 24/7 care. That one of their other dogs was about to be put to sleep, and so I can't remember. But remember, I sat outside with the guy for like an hour and a half, just talking to him about like just different stuff, and then. So yeah, there's a lot that you don't see in the show, but even in general in our practice of trainers, it is kind of about just talking and trying to level with people and trying to how you get them through it and how you help them move forward really, because everyone's got a lot of stuff going on. And sometimes the animals just, I know we talk about like the symptom and what is the core problem, but that can be the same for people as well. Maybe this dog is just a symptom of what you're seeing, and actually there's a core problem that they're struggling with, that you maybe need to address that to be able to help the dog training and without getting too like sort of into it. But yeah, on that sort of stuff, there's a lot more behind the show than what people are seeing.
And we did, yes, you're saying, we did more cases. That's what you're talking about. That particular case, we did more cases than you actually see. And so I had this German Shepherd who I wish they'd shown the story because it was amazing. And the outcome was amazing too. But for some reason they didn't choose it to show it. But, you know, the spinning German Shepherd, it was a fascinating case. But maybe that's got to be for series 3.
Maybe, yeah.
You could honestly get another 2 or 3 really good episodes out of the other cases that we did. We had cases where they were in and then they got removed out and then they got put back in, and they couldn't decide which way to do it.
Yeah, I think the thing with this series is I think that when we filled more dogs and we had more cases that you think, geez, where you could go in so many different ways because they were such strong cases consistently and the results were so powerful. It's like, wow, you're spoilt for choice really, which was amazing. You know, I think I don't remember the specific number, but I know there was a massive uptake in applications for series 2 from series 1.
Oh, huge. Thousands.
Yeah.
And if there's a series 3, there'll be thousands too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they were, I don't think casting for series 2, we had a lot for series 1, but casting for series 2, I don't think that they were ready for the amount of people that needed help.
Yeah. It was thousands. It was a ridiculous amount of, I think this wasn't the statistics, but let's just say we had 1,000 in series 1. I think we had something stupid like 8,000 in series 2. That was how big the uptake was. But yeah, it was a sport for choice. So where are we at? So Hilwin says, my dog is what I described as a stress, excitement humper. Thankfully, it's behavior I almost never seen from him now. Yeah, definitely. And I'd say that's probably where, you know, he's growing, he's developing, whatever it was that was triggering that, you've identified and you've worked through. So amazing. Well done to that. Lorraine said, I did my border collie as he's never around kids. He was 5 years old when my first grandchild was born. I played baby crying on my phone, went around carrying a doll, put talc onto the doll so he gets used to the baby smell. Really good idea of baby talc. When my granddaughter was born, I got clothing of the baby so that Blue, my dog, could sniff it before she came in visit. When I sat my granddaughter on my knee, I think that's meant to, I'd also get a toy out and play with Blue at the same time with the dog on my knee. That's excellent. Great proactive preparation for a new child. And again, that's a really good point. It doesn't have to be parents. It could be grandparents as well. That's a really, really good point. Yeah, if you're going to be part of that child's life, it's really important to prepare for that new child. So Adam on YouTube. I'm assuming this is not Adam Dames. I'm hoping this is not Adam Dames. My dog won't STFU. I think we know that means what do I do? So that's Adam. You just elaborate on what the circumstances are, because it's not as straightforward as that. To give you an answer, there could be so many reasons. Okay, labs are amazing. How much tolerant from kids? They just seem to be like being taken advantage of, at least the ones I've seen, including mine. I think that Labradors by nature are just a really gregarious breed generally, and they're quite physically a robust breed of dog. And I'd say that they're just the type of dog that are resilient. So yeah, definitely a dog that fits well to lots of families. Let's have a look. The point about safe zone for kids applies to adults coming around too. Absolutely. Yeah. The huge message is advocate for their dog, advocate for your dog, and, definitely don't be afraid to, put some stringent requirements of guests or house members or family members. Sorry, go on, Sean.
On that as well. Sometimes dogs need the break as well. I did a client not so long ago that it basically it had a couple of fits, and then it was having a fit once a week, and basically she was really attached to the owners. And when they were getting up through the night, when they were doing shifts, and one was sleeping in and one was doing the kid and this, that, and the other, the dog was doing every shift. The dog was never sleeping, and it was on severe sleep deprivation. So when they were in the living room, it was lying next to them, and it wasn't never sleeping. It was always awake for the baby, listening. Whenever she made a noise, she was always first at the cot. And then what we did, so I put a program in place that essentially, in a vague way, just gave the dog breaks, had its own space, was put in its own room to just rest, hasn't had a fit again. And so when people are coming over, dogs don't need to be there 100% of the time. And actually, a lot of the time, it's good for them to have their own break, because if you're fried as a mum or a father, the dog is going through the exact same thing if it's living there with you. So, like I say, if I had loads of kids come over to my place now, I'd just put them in the dog room with a bone each.
Yeah.
And they'd be happier. They would be probably, but they'd be happier. They'd be like, oh, this is all right. So don't force it, is what I would say.
I used to have to put my dog in crate to keep him safe when my niece and nephew came over. Otherwise, my niece would just not leave him alone, and the parents were a little help. Yeah, I think, again, advocate, even with family. It's not worth getting into conflict with your family members, especially if you're there to enjoy the presence of your family. Just put the dogs away. I mean, my nephew and my niece have been here. My nephew loves the dogs, actually, but he would want to be a bit too much with them, so I have to just police them. And not in a bad way. He's just enthusiastic to be around them because they don't have a dog or don't have dogs. And that's a common occurrence. So I do supervise his interactions and try to integrate. And he'd come out and help me prep for Crufts. He's only about 4, but it was fun to have him be involved and obviously nurture his passion for animals, but also to teach him how to be around them. And that, to me, and that's the other thing I'd say about children and dogs is, the other thing that I'm really big on, especially with Neve, isn't just about her interaction. It's how I interact with my dogs, because it's about life lessons. Right. It isn't just about, how she is. It's about how I treat my dogs, because at the end of the day, kids are always watching. So how I talk to them, how I train them, how I behave around them, all of that, I know she's watching. And I am very aware of how I that's a big thing as well.
One of the first things that Bowen knows, one of his first words, well, kind of half words, is dog, and he points at dogs now. But we taught him pat, and if you say pat, he'll pat the head of the dog, and he'll pat, like even toy dogs, he pats them. And we try and get that into him was we can now sort of control the interaction with the dog. So whenever he's around an animal or a dog, if you just say pat pat, rather than him trying to reach out and grab or be a little bit random, we can kind of guide him and know what he's going to do, and then you get like better interactions. Honestly, just feel your way through it and kind of build on it. But there is a lot of stuff out there that you can do that does help you along your way. Definitely.
Vicky came up with a good solution. I used to put my niece in the dog crates and let the dogs run free. Yeah. Vicky, we're going to put that on you. That's a disclaimer. We haven't advised that.
We'll do that on episode 3. We'll be like, there you go. Case is solved.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. No, I've done it on It's Me or the Dog. Yeah. I did it on It's Me or the Dog, where I went into the crate first, and then my client went into the crate, and I shut her in there for a little while. I was like, now feel like you're in there for 6-7 hours a day. Now, and she was like, I got it. But I made sure I did it myself first.
Absolutely.
So I wasn't just pushing her in a crate.
Absolutely. Please, Channel 4, renew the series. These are fab trainers who deserve more exposure than 1 on 5. But yes, well, we think so. But thank you for the kind compliments. Matt said, Louis, Channel 4's Dog House has had many more series. It seems to complement Dog Academy really well. In my opinion, I hope the Channel 4 takes. Yeah, we hope we do. But you know what? The other thing to say is, and I'd speak on confident on behalf of all trainers. We have really enjoyed this whole process, and I think that we all feel very honored and privileged to have been in the series that we've done thus far. And no matter the outcome, I think that we have shown people what is possible with their dogs and some great ideas, and hopefully giving you things to think about. And that always was the agenda. So for us, I personally feel that our goal was achieved.
Oh yeah, I absolutely. Even to get a second series in this whole TV climate is and I have to say the sort of the difference between us and on Channel 5 that's because I know, because the Channel 5 trainer, it follows It's Me or the Dog, right? It's Me or the Dog was like the first show started in 2005, and so it's a much cheaper show to make when you're got a small crew and you're going into people's homes. The Dog Academy, is a very expensive show to make. So there's they have to weigh that up, you know.
Morag said, we let our smooth-haired collie outside when people and children come to visit, but now he always wants to run in circles as soon as he seems an open space. A behavior can't stop. So again, enrichment tools. If you're going to pop him outside, give him something to do out there so he's not then rehearsing that. Like a Kong or Snufflemat or the Rolo from Play 9 World, something along those lines, and just redirect that energy. And hopefully you'll get over that problem in no time.
He's kind of doing what a collie really does.
Yeah.
And he's probably, if he's just been getting put out by himself, he's probably self-soothed or burnt off energy or stimulation by doing that. So just give him something else, and you should you'll see it massively reduce, if anything.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's all the comments and questions. Thank you very much for those that have watched. Obviously, for the support of the series, we are incredibly proud of it. If you haven't watched it, you can watch still what go online and have a look at it retrospectively. At the moment, as I said, we're not sure whether there'll be a hope. Seriously, we're fingers crossed, and we can hopefully, if we can will it to happen, then definitely we will try.
Yeah, write to Channel 4 if you want it.
Yeah,
everybody write.
Yeah, definitely.
Petition going.
What's that?
Let's get a petition going.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But thank you, as I said, for the support, the questions, and the participation. Hopefully, it's giving you some food for thought with your dogs, and hopefully you enjoyed the series. But for us, see you all later. Thank you all.